Evan, you're not connected to your Facebook. I don't know if that means we are live on that. So
welcome to HVAC Success Secrets Revealed, a show where we interview industry leaders and disruptors, revealing the success secrets to create and unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Now your hosts, Thaddeus and Evan.
Hey, welcome back to AC Success Secrets Revealed, where we have good conversations with good people, and any good conversation worth having is worth having drunk. So cheers, gentlemen.
cheers.
Dan, welcome to the show. Appreciate it. So for those of you that don't know or happen to miss any of the 8 posts that we put out about it, talking about having Dan on the show this week, Dan Antonelli is from KickCharge Creative. He is also the author of Building a Big Small Business Brand. He has been in the industry now since he was 15 years old, starting by hand placing vinyl letters on vans, right?
Initially, it was actually hand painted. So
Hand
we did a lot
painted.
of hand lettering back in the time. Yeah.
Wow. And even if you haven't somehow heard of Dan or his business and KickCharge Creative, I guarantee you've seen his work. They've personally designed over 600 HVAC brand vans on the road. They specialize in this category. I'm super excited to dive into it. They're one of a kind. They truly are. So I'm really, really excited to dive into this and talking about rebranding companies and what guys should think about when they're first getting started with building their brand. So welcome, Dan, to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I always love talking about this. It's just really a passion of mine and something that, like you said, since I've been 15, I've been doing this. And actually the first van that I hand lettered at 15 was for a plumbing company. So It's kind of interesting that I'm, 35 years later, I'm still doing lettering and designs for plumbing companies and HVAC companies. So it's definitely pretty neat to still be pursuing this and to really be continuing to try to hone my craft and to really try to, again, keep pushing boundaries, keep pushing the envelope, and keep trying to really elevate the work that we do as best we can.
I love it. Well, and that brings me to my first question. I just want to dive head first right into the deep end. But one of the things I've heard you say is that we believe that designers need to design like their lives are at stake. Where did that philosophy come from?
So it's something that I think, we've really thought about. We went through EOS and traction. If you guys are familiar with EOS and traction, it's kind of, you kind of really look introspective into the company as far as, well, who are we and really what makes us tick? And when we looked at the people that were here and where they came from, like a lot of them actually came from bigger ad agencies where they felt like that their work really had no impact in their clients' lives. Like they're doing work for AT&T and Verizon. And it's like, okay, we do this new cool campaign and what really happens? They sell more subscribers. Like, so what? Like, is that really impacting people's lives in a meaningful way? So we have a lot of like what I call transplants of people who came from bigger agency backgrounds where they just felt like that their work was not making a difference. And then we, sort of looked at that and then looked at the impact that our work was having on our clients' lives. You could take Gettle, for example. You guys have probably heard for Gettle, and we did the branding for Gettle probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And that was a $7 million company when we rebranded them. And now they're a $150 million company. And they literally went from like 60 or 70 employees to 500 or 600 employees. So think about how many lives were impacted. I'm not going to say it's 100% because of the brand we created, because obviously there's a lot of factors that go into it. And Ken is a genius, as everyone knows. But certainly lives were impacted because of the work or the role that we played. So we look at our work as having that importance and recognizing that we need to make sure that we do our work carefully and well thought out, because lives really will be impacted by the work that we produce. And we, whether that's a company that hires more people or the owner finally can take a vacation, no matter what, like those are the things that we love to see. And when we see the growth, and we're so focused on metrics too, because we really want to make sure that we're measuring the results of our work and that we're able to see how a company has grown after rebranding. But when we see and hear those numbers and see how much they've grown, it's just really rewarding. Like I've had the opportunity to go out and see some of the facilities and visit the companies that we've rebranded, and I had seen them before, and then you see them after, and you just marvel at kind of what has happened to them, and know that you played a part in that is just really, I think, what everyone here, I think, finds so rewarding. And I actually teach wrap design, and that's one of the things that we talk about is understanding the role that you play and how important it is. So nothing makes me sadder than when I see really bad work being put out on the street, because that tells me that the person who did that work didn't understand their craft, didn't pay enough attention to the things that they needed to know about that industry, and that client of theirs didn't get what they had signed up for. So I look at that as such a sad missed opportunity. And so I try to teach, when I teach my wrap design classes, that's one of the things I'm instilling is, know the responsibility that you have, accept that responsibility, and focus all your efforts on how you can be the best designer possible, so that deliverable for that client, will function the way it was intended to. Like, a guy comes to you, he's got a marketing problem, and you should know how to solve it. And if you don't, you shouldn't be in this business, because you're taking their money and they're trusting you to know what you're doing. And if you don't, and that's what makes me so sad is that, I drive, on the highways, and then I see the post on Facebook, oh, here's my new truck wrap. And it's sad for me half the times, because like they don't even really know that what they just paid for is marginalized and not going to function the way that it should. So when I see stuff like that, I'm sad on a couple of different levels, that the designer wasn't educated enough to really know how to perform their job well. And then I'm sad for the missed opportunity that business owner, is experiencing, because they didn't get the right foundation put in place.
No, 100%. And it really sounds like you care deeply about the businesses and the success that they can get by having things done the right way, which it probably is one of the reasons why you've had the success that you've had, is because of the actual caring about them. It's not just a sale, it's just not just a transaction, it's you're their partner with them, in that. And I know that, you look at some of the Facebook groups that we're in, and I usually tag you in people that are looking for feedback on their van and wrap designs on there, just because, we're obviously big fans of the work that you've done as well in creating it. But one of the questions, what are some of the things, this can go on in a long topic, and so kind of piece this how you see fit, but what are some of the things that you see done incorrectly the most often when it comes to vehicle wraps?
You tend to see a lot of stuff where legibility is compromised, or it's very difficult to discern or read some of the messaging. Maybe the logo itself is compromised or doesn't function well for an outdoor environment. And that's kind of the distinction as well, too, is that you have to remember that this brand is being viewed from a large distance, or, so it's not like looking at a business card or on a website where the distance is very close. It's a very longer distance that logo needs to be legible for. So common mistakes, you see guys put just way too many graphics and way too many sort of eye candy stuff into this wrap design, and then the focal point is really lost. So we always approach wrap design as actually with how little we can actually have in the wrap design, while still making it very brand centric. So I want that logo to always remain in the foreground, and all the other stuff always needs to sit in the background. And that's a lot of challenges you see, is guys have everything in foreground. So your eye looks at it and you don't even know what to focus on, because there's just stuff all screaming for your attention. So that's something you see there. And then listen, a lot of the real challenges results from the fact that they don't have a great foundation to start with. So there is literally no way to build an effective wrap design without a strong brand. So that's something that we run into all the time, where guys like, oh, we love your work and we want you to do a cool truck wrap. Here's our logo. And then they send me something and I'm just like, I can't do anything with this. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I want to help you, but like you either can fix this foundation, and then we could do something good, or like, I'm just not probably the right guy to help you with this if that's what you want to keep, because there's no way I can get you to the space where it's comparable to our other work. So we just found that was a losing proposition, because they'd see all our other work and they're like, oh, we love your other work. And they think that their logo is going to sort of match up or live up to that expectation. And there's just no way to get there because of the limitations of what they're giving us to start with. So, listen, we'll I'm not trying to bash them, but I'm just going to kindly explain what the challenges are and why it won't work in that environment. And that's, really up to them at that point if they want to pursue a rebrand or not. And, there's occasionally times where guys have something solid to work with, and we're happy to do something with that. But it's more like, 95% don't have something that we feel confident that we can build something effective around. And I'm just not really interested in essentially wasting their money. So like, I'm just going to be upfront and just say, hey, listen, I don't think I could work with this. Here's why. And, if you want, we could help do something better. Or if not, like, I totally understand. And that's cool. Like, I respect that too. So, it's also too, when you think about, people get confused about truck wraps and the idea of disruption and how that plays a role in brand building. And you can make a pink and purple truck and it'll be disruptive, but it's more than just the idea of having something that breaks through the clutter. It's also, what does that messaging deliver as a brand promise? And that's again where you see a lot of problems, is maybe it is disruptive in that sense where it feels like it's unique, but then you dig deeper and you're like, well, if I'm a homeowner and I only judge you by that truck because that's my only visual representation of your brand that I see, well, what do I think about your company based on that presentation? And so those are the things that really good branding and certainly truck wraps are trying to control, is we're trying to really control what that impression of your company is. And without that foundation, it's really hard for them to have that right takeaway. Listen, I want to control every single thing that happens before the technician rings the doorbell. I want that homeowner to think positive things about the experience that they're about to receive from your company. And I want to formulate those impressions in their minds based on the visuals that they see, whether it's online, whether it's on the truck or whatever. Once you ring the doorbell, listen, it's out of my hands. I can't control what you perform after that. But I at least want to make sure that they feel a certain sense of professionalism, honesty, integrity, value. All those things are really what those visuals are meant to communicate and help persuade that customer. You got to remember too, like, contractors in general, people are afraid of contractors. They're afraid of being ripped off. They're afraid of who's coming to their homes. So how does the brand address that? And how does the brand speak to those fears? And that's where you see a lot of stuff where it just doesn't connect. It doesn't tell a brand story. And there's nothing also to leverage in your other marketing that will help tell that brand story as well. So, I sort of use the term blanding, where it's like, it's very bland and there's nothing about the brand that you can leverage. Right. So having a story to go along with that brand is so important, not just from a visual perspective, but in the written words. So the words on a website speaking to that engagement, and literally, like, honestly, these guys, you guys can take this test yourself. If you go on your own website and you imagine that the logo on the top was swapped out and somebody else's logo was put in there, and then every time it said your company name, they simply changed it to someone else's company name. If it all reads the same, then what do you have? Mm-hmm. You've got a generic website that speaks nothing about what's unique and compelling about your business. So that, like, we look at that when we design and write a website, and especially for a brand that we've designed and created, the words on those websites have to also speak to that unique experience. And that's typically where you see a lot of stuff that just feels, really generic and doesn't actually speak to that customer in an authentic way. And largely because there's nothing authentic about the brand itself to begin with. So that's kind of the challenge, is like, well, in the defense of some of the other web design companies, how do I write about a company that literally has no brand story? You Correct. Can't really. It's just all generic. Hey, we're going to show up on time. We'll be honest and trustworthy. Okay, cool. Like
every other
everybody else.
Business. Yeah.
And you'll have a red and blue logo with a snowflake and a flame.
You forgot the arrows.
Right. The circulation arrows around that. Yep. What was the stat, Evan? Something like, I can't remember the exact percentage, but I know that you might know the number of the amount of HVAC companies that have a red and white branding colors. Was it like 75% or 80%? I don't remember.
I
Maybe
can't remember either.
maybe I'm making shit up. I don't know.
No, I had read it somewhere. I
It
think it's
wouldn't
something
surprise me. I mean,
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
th-
And
that would
look, we're not
be
saying
my estimation.
Yeah.
yeah, we're not saying that hey, if you're watching or you're listening, you're like, "Oh, well shit, they just said I have a red and white colors." Well, I did it wrong. No, that's not what we're saying. Just make sure you have that. So I did actually I had I'm glad that you brought up the word brand promise or
Hmm.
words brand promise because I had one of those questions written down, for that and talking about okay, what is a brand promise? What goes into it? How can you convey that, in your messaging? There's a lot to unpack in that particular thing, but let's start with the easy one. What is a brand promise and how can you put that into a
It's
logo?
it, yeah, it's the idea of communicating something unique and compelling about your company to a prospect. So what is it about your company that they can sort of discern from the branding that will lead them to believe or conclude something about the experience that they might receive? And it's also, even if you imagine too, branding and the role that it plays. If you imagine you just perform service at someone's house and then they were to speak about that experience to their neighbor, how would they describe that experience? How would they describe everything about what they experienced with that particular service company? So you say it's what people say about your business behind your back, kind of thing, is one of
Mm.
the descriptions about branding, and brand promise certainly goes along with that. But like I mentioned, the idea of really trying to communicate something that's unique, that's compelling about that experience that they might receive, and then how you can extrapolate that promise into the story of your brand and the content that's delivered. So even like if you imagine that a brand is a living, breathing person, and you met that person at a party, well, how would they speak to you? How would they interact with you? Would they be funny? Would they be witty? Would they be like really serious? Like how would they be? So, we try to look at it that from that perspective as well, is trying to figure out how does this brand speak to the target audience, or how would they speak to the target audience, and how do the visuals connect those dots and tie all those things together?
It's almost like their personality.
Yeah.
What's their personality? I mean, you mentioned the party, how are they going to speak to you? How are they going to talk? What's their
Hmm.
demeanor? What's their body language? What are they dressed like, right? All of that goes into an individual's personality. And so if you can come across with that in your brand and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a fun and energetic brand," right? Cool. Come across with that in
Yeah.
personality and language that you speak.
And the beauty of what we're talking about right now is actually that the vast majority of contractors, especially HVAC, really have a neutral brand promise. Some of them have a negative, because actually you could infer something negative by looking at their presentation of their design elements and their trucks and things like that. But most of them are really neutral,
Hmm.
meaning that I don't necessarily think anything bad about them, but I really don't think anything good about them either. I'm just like, whatever. Like it
Mhm.
hasn't really reached me on a personal level, or made an impact into me significantly. So if you imagine that, let's just say 90% of those clients or companies live in a world that is either neutral or negative. Well, what happens if you're the only guy in your space that is delivering positive, um, and doing it in a way that's disruptive? Now all of a sudden, like you're already rising above what everyone else is doing, and you're doing it in a way that's connecting to that consumer on a much deeper level. And so we see stuff like for example, even just branded search terms really increase dramatically for a well-branded company, because it's not just
Hmm.
trying to be number one for heating repair, Washington, New Jersey. It's people having their name typed in right off the bat. Like, who cares if you're like, it's not saying who cares, but like, I understand the need to want to be number one for all your search terms, right? How realistic is that in different markets? That's really hard. But let's just say you were number one, top of mind. It wouldn't even matter then if you were number one, or for the search terms, because they would just type in your name when they needed service, right? So isn't
Yep.
it better for them to think about your company only when they need service, rather than rely on Google for trying to deliver those results to get them to click on you? So like, we just had a client in Florida that just launched, changed nothing about his advertising, and literally just put two brand new wrap trucks on the road, and then his organic traffic increased tenfold
Hmm.
the day they hit the
Mhm.
street. nothing else changed in his marketing. And he was suddenly 10x on his organic traffic. Well, what the hell happened there? Like, how do you explain that, right? So he went from, again, blanding and totally fitting in. He had white trucks. They didn't stand out. There was nothing unique or compelling or disruptive about him. To now, all of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, who the hell is this company? And it wasn't just a one-day spike either. It was consistent after it happened. So, we've seen that in many different markets where you change nothing at all about the rest of the marketing strategy, but you rebrand and you get something more disruptive out on the streets. And all of a sudden, all the other channels are just performing so much better.
No, that's like
It's a billboard on wheels, right? So
100%.
if you're not going to invest into your brand and into your marketing, then what's the point in doing other forms, right?
Well,
You're
and
going to end up paying a lot more for it.
but just branded search terms in general, like you think of the continuity that you can have with that. Like if I go ba, people know that it's McDonald's, right? And so seeing that continuity, I mean, you have to think about, okay, well, now I have a truck, it's a moving billboard. How can I create that continuity? So I mean, if you do jingles, obviously you get into the radio, you have that, but making sure that it's constant all across all of your channels, and that's really how you build the brand. But and I don't really want to focus on the negative. I always like to try to focus on the positive. But you said that, a negative brand promise. Some companies have that. What's an example of a negative brand promise so people can understand what exactly that is?
I mean, it's a culmination of a number of things, but it all really relates back to the presentation of what their messaging is on the streets. So when you see, like, again, a poorly wrapped truck, or a truck that is just not well taken care of, or you hand out a business card and it's really not well designed, or the uniforms look poorly put together, or maybe there's no uniforms at all. I mean, all those impressions are signifying something on an unconscious level to that consumer about your company.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't we want to lead in with something that is very compelling, that makes them feel like you took time to craft an image of your company that represents the quality of work that you actually deliver? And that's the thing, is that, the guys who hire us to do work for them, they're usually guys that are delivering an amazing service. They just don't look like they're delivering an amazing service. So what would happen if you married up those two ideas? If you married up the fact that we kill it when we ring that doorbell, and before we ring that doorbell, we certainly look like we provide a great service as well. And that's again, when those two things marry up, it's killer. Like, it's just, again, not really what everyone else is paying attention to and what everyone else really fully understands. So we've just seen tremendous results for those types of companies. But you see the guys with the logos and the brands that just look childish, that just look awful, that just look dated, or their clip art or stuff like that, or it looks like a logo that they've seen 100 times before. All those things are contributing to what that consumer is thinking. So there's so much psychology that goes into the work that we do. And I think that's the part too, that even when guys think about their brands, and they think about designing it, they're always like, well, I want to design a logo for my company that I like. And it's all about what they like. And we always try to reframe that question and say, while I understand you want to like your logo, and I certainly don't want to sell you a logo that you hate, because that would be kind of weird. But I'm really more interested in Mrs. Jones. She's age 45 to 55. She's got 2 kids. She's got a medium income of $175,000, and she's got a dog and a husband. That's who I want to try to communicate to, because she's the one that's making the initial point of contact, typically. So, like, I try to frame it as far as what is appealing to the audience that you're trying to sell to the most, and what will they connect with on a deeper level? What will cause them to remember your brand when they need service? All those types of quick questions. So sometimes you see guys that maybe when they first started, it was all about what they like, and maybe it's a super masculine approach, and it's got like some angled lettering, and it's diamond plate and all this other stuff, and it's super cool and hardcore. But then that doesn't really appeal to Mrs. Smith. She's like, again, like, doesn't want this crazy guy coming to her house. She wants to feel like really comfortable with who she's coming to the house. It's the same thing when you see guys using mascots with like superheroes that are super muscled and like super aggressive in their stance. There's a couple of logos that it's like the guy's running towards you and he's carrying a pipe wrench and he looks like he's going to beat the shit out of you. Mrs. Smith is like a little worried about that. Like, that's not really want to come into our house. And it's like funny. It's funny, but it's like, those logos, like you've seen them.
Like every single plumbing logo that has the guy with the pipe wrench over his shoulder with the coveralls on or the overalls on. Like, that's like every single plumbing logo. Like,
it's like scary, so like how do we appeal to them on a softer level and one in which makes them feel like comfortable about who's coming to their house. I mean, that's their biggest concern is, maybe they're home alone and they got somebody coming to the house and they're freaked out a little bit, so you got to think about those things too.
Yep. Well, and that's actually a valid point, making them feel comfortable. I know in our household, like, we have something in Canada called Kijiji, similar to Craigslist down there. In Facebook Marketplace, you buy and sell things. And in our household, my wife sometimes feels uncomfortable making those sorts of transactions if I'm not home. And so that's actually something that's an often overlooked thing is, okay, if you're going there during the day and, whether it's the male or female at home, the majority of times, 70%, 80% of the household buying decisions are the female in a household. And so making sure that you're catering that towards them is a super important and often overlooked component of everything that, a business does.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
Well, I do love this conversation, and we're going to come back to it around the brand and the marketing and everything. But I'd be remiss if we don't, one, show some gratitude to the fact that you're even able to do this right now and be here with us. You've gone through something pretty remarkable in the last 3.5 months, where you had a double bypass surgery. And I know before the show we kind of chatted a little bit about that, but it's given you a unique perspective on life and business and what the ultimate outcomes are. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on in the show, and we kind of brought this up in the beginning, but as a salesman of any kind or saleswoman, your role is to put the customer as if the worst case scenario was going to happen and you don't want that to happen. So let's take care of it ahead of time. Right. And I use the example of Niagara Falls. If you had a family member who was in a life or death scenario, would you rather let them know that this problem was coming when they were a couple miles from the falls or when they were 5 feet from the falls? Right. And they're about to go over the edge. Right. You want to give them as much of a heads up as possible. So from your perspective, going what you've just gone through, what new outlooks, what new perspectives can you share on going from operating table and getting that news ahead of time even to now where you're at running the business today?
Yeah. I mean, on one hand, like when I found out that I needed to have the surgery, like it's better than having an emergency surgery, right? Because typically where I had the blockages in my heart, if you have a heart attack there, you're typically dead. So on one hand, I was like feeling lucky that I had that, but then you have the weeks before the surgery where you're sort of pondering all this, and because of COVID, it took longer to even have the surgery. But I think it was a good thing to sort of go through, because I think we all feel like we're plowing ahead full speed for so long and for so many years, and we think that there's this thing at a certain date or at a certain point down the road where you're supposed to like be able to relax and enjoy kind of all the things that you've done preceding that work. And for me, certainly I'm 25 or 26 years into running this agency, and I had started trying to pull back a little bit. I had actually promoted someone here to be head of operations, I think in September or October, even before I knew I was having the surgery. And I sort of always kept on thinking, oh, well, like, when I get to this age, then I'll be able to sort of step back and like enjoy things. And then like you're sitting there and you're like, well, I'm 50 years old right now. And like, if I didn't get this thing fixed, there's a pretty high likelihood that I wouldn't have made it through the year, let's just say. They basically said I had a 5% survival rate if I didn't get the surgery. So you look at that and you say, well, wow, like, everyone jokes about 50 being your mid-year crisis year. And I'm like, well, shit, 25 would have been my mid-year then, basically. So I just started thinking about, how much time I was spending here, right? And how many things maybe I had sacrificed for that. And I also probably forced me to really look hard at the team that we have here and say, these people are good people, right? And let them take the reins and see what they can do. And that's really, I didn't have a choice really at that point, and so for, probably 6 weeks, right after surgery, I couldn't do anything, obviously, but even preceding the surgery, I was doing very little here. And I was letting them sort of, take the wheels. And the fact that, we're into April now, and revenue for us is up almost like 55%. And I've been out for like 6 of those weeks or 7 of those weeks, not really doing much. So it's just like, wow, they're just killing it, like, and they're firing on all cylinders. So it forced me to like actually have that happen, and be able to step back. And now you can see the vision of, hey, like I could probably just come in 20 hours a week or something like that and just do my favorite logos that I want to work on and be involved in and things like that. And then they can do all this other stuff. So like freeing myself of all this stuff and the day-to-day stuff has been so liberating for me. Like, cause I hated that stuff. And I probably sucked at that stuff too, which is probably why our our numbers are up, since I'm out of that world. So like that's been really great. And then like, I did something crazy with my wife, and we just purchased a piece of land that we're going to build our dream summer house on. And I don't think that I would have done that, honestly, if I hadn't gone through this experience, and I was like, what are we going to do? Like, wait till we're 60 then to do this? Like, why? Like, it's not like we're putting ourselves in financial jeopardy to do it now. So what do we, like, I don't understand. What have we been waiting for? If we have the means to do something now. So, I did something like that, and just really trying to say, I'm going to cut back my hours. I'm going to focus more on my family. I'm going to focus more on my friends, doing more bike rides and things like that. So like, it's the weirdest thing to say, but I consider having this whole thing happen with my heart to be the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Like, I'm so grateful that I sort of went through this experience. And yeah, it's still painful and it still hurts, and it sucks how much fitness I lost, because I'm a bike racer, and so that part kind of sucks. But I don't think that I get to where I am, without having gone through that experience. I think it just would have taken a lot longer to sort of do that. And I'm just grateful that I've been able to really kind of step back and just let these guys do what they do. And it is, I mean, we have an amazing team. Everyone, always talks about me being, sort of the brains behind all the brands. And they forget that I've got 4 other designers here that work with me every day on this stuff, and I know I'm the face of the brand, and I get that, but there's so many other really, really smart people here. And sometimes I'm just like sitting back and sort of letting them do stuff, because they know what the deal is. Like, my main illustrator has been with me for 16 years. It's not like, I mean, it's not like he just started, so we have a great team. And certainly I would just tell everyone here to just remember that tomorrow is not promised to anyone, and like, literally, like, if you knew you were going to die in a year, what would you do? Like, what would you do differently? Like, you wouldn't be doing the same shit you're doing every day. You'd probably be changing a lot about how, you're living. So, just remember that, you don't know really what's around the corner. I'm a guy that has been racing bicycles for 20 years, and I eat pretty well, and I'm 145 pounds. I'm not really the poster child for heart disease and double bypass. So, if it can happen to me, I mean, there's all this stuff, obviously, that can happen. We don't really know, but I'm just saying, like, think about, really how you're choosing to spend your time. And we're all entrepreneurs, and we all want to, it's in our nature, it's in our DNA to just be grinding like all the time. But if you can't stop and enjoy some of the fruits of their labor, then what are we doing? And I think we all look at our jobs as not really jobs, right? They're fun. Like, I still love coming here, and I get that aspect, but do I need to be doing 60, 70-hour weeks? Probably not. And if I can't enjoy the fruits of those labors, then there's no Brinks truck that's following the hearse to the funeral home, at least as far as I know. So
Well,
what are you gonna do?
there's a lot that, to say on that. You're right. Like, people look at work and hours, and yeah, I worked 80 hours this week, as some sort of an honor badge.
Hmm.
And really,
Hmm.
you look at, in everybody I'm sure has heard this quote before. Nobody on their deathbed ever says, "Gee, I wish I spent more time at the office." Right?
Hmm.
They never say that. They're like, "No, I wish I spent more time with my friends. I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. What are some things that I wish I would have done?" And then they have these regrets that come over them at the end of the day. But to have the experience that you went through, like I'm getting like, if you look at my arms, I have goosebumps talking about this, because it's not something that a lot of people would openly talk about and share, to say, hey, let's actually take a step back from the grind. Let's actually reevaluate what's important to my life, and let's actually focus on those things, and to have those experiences and to recognize those experiences too. It's one thing to have it and then go back into the exact same thing that a person was doing, but to recognize it and change it for the better is a very, very powerful thing. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people can take a lot away from this particular part of the conversation, to just say, stop and enjoy your time with who you need.
Yeah.
And but also in business, one of the toughest things, and we talk about the e-myth quite a bit, in removing yourself from that business. I'm happy to be the dumbest person in the room.
Hmm.
Right. And me saying that,
Absolutely.
some
Yeah.
some people are my friends list, and in watching the show, they're like, no, you're joking, because I like to talk, right? That's who I am, that's my personality. But I am 100% okay with not being the smartest person in the room and delegating those out to people, because that's what's going to help you as a business. So one of the question that I wanted to ask and get into is saying, okay, you've had this experience, you had no choice really to let your business go to somebody else. What are some eye-opening, or I guess learning experiences that you can help another person? I mean, I don't want to say go through the same thing, but relinquish control of their business to somebody else.
I think to your point too, like you hire people that are smarter than you, right? And you create a company of giants that way. If you hire dwarfs, you create a company that's smaller than you, right? So the idea of hiring people, and I think the biggest thing was, it's not that it was a lack of trust. It was just that you almost didn't want to give them the wings to fly, so to speak, sometimes, because you felt like, well, I can do that, and I should be doing that. And I think what I found is certainly trusting them, and having them basically just take the reins, and almost like, hey, you know what, show me what you can do. And like, they really all rose up to that opportunity. And I think the one thing too is, I think it actually made them a lot happier, because they felt more important. They
Hmm.
felt like that they were trusted more. And certainly, like, as you look at the numbers, even in my case, it's like, wow, you guys make a strong argument as to why I'm completely irrelevant here. And that's fine. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, but it's been something that certainly, again, surrounded with the right people, and people that are really bright and really smart and energetic, and share the vision of the company, so the person that on my team that I promoted to be head of operations, she's been with me, I think, almost 10 years now. And just an amazing person, amazing work ethic. And again, the other leadership team is just really all good people that I've been blessed to have with me all these years. And I just kind of almost enjoy the fact also, we're just kind of saying, I'm not really in charge anymore. And there's something liberating about that as well, because day-to-day issues, or someone's got a problem, they don't come to me and ask me anything anymore. Or it's just like, hey, talk to talk to her. Like, I'm not involved.
Like, I don't know the answer,
So
so
yeah, so you kind of relieve yourself of that added stress of being, the one in charge now. And sure, I have say in things that happen here, but like, I'm not really making decisions on day to day. I'm not dealing with hiring or firing or staffing issues, or like any of those nitty gritty. And those are things I hated. Like, I hated dealing with that. Like, I want to be in a corner designing logos. Like, that's what I want to do. if I'm not in that corner designing logos, then I'm really not doing something that is the best use of my time, first of all, and the thing I enjoy most. So I would get aggravated when I would have to be brought into scenarios that I felt like I wasn't best equipped to deal with. So,
Mhm.
HR stuff, we've got an HR person now, like talk to them, like they'll help you out. But so there's just something very liberating about the fact also where really you're not as in control anymore of things. And you also have that sense of shared responsibility where you feel like the leadership team really knows what our obstacles are, what our hurdles are, and what we're all working towards. And it's a shared responsibility now, as opposed to me feeling like I have to steer the ship and like everything's on me. And if like things go bad, it's totally on like, so I don't really feel that sense of pressure anymore that I had been feeling before. And
Mhm.
probably 25 years worth of that wasn't great for my heart either. I mean, I know it's really genetics that screwed me up, but I'm sure that that's not a healthy thing either to carry that burden and that stress all these years as well. So just being able to hand some of that stuff off, I think has been great.
Amazing.
I'd say that not drinking every Wednesday probably isn't good for your
Yeah,
stress
I mean,
either, but
this is
oh
yeah, that's definitely not.
well.
As we
No,
all
that
take a
was
sip of our drink.
that was really powerful, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's all about perspective at the end of the day, and a reminder of what are we doing this for? Yes, it's like you said, it's fun to show up to the office, and it's enjoyable, and we're doing the work that we love, which is why we're able to go 70, 80, 90 hours a week, because we love it. If you didn't love it, you wouldn't do the work. But at the same time, the perspective of family, of friends, of laughter and joy, yeah, it's all
I think
incredibly.
the one other thing too is that the idea of being grateful
Mm,
is
Mm.
something that I probably haven't been as good to my people as I should have been all these years. And so that's one thing that I've over the last 3 months have really focused my efforts on is to make sure the people that I count on know how appreciative I am, and verbally and in other ways to just remind them and thank them for what they've been able to help me with.
mhm,
And so even like when I bought this property, and realized that, hey, I'm going to be able to probably in the summers go there for a couple weeks if I want and just remote in and do some stuff while they're taking care of everything here in the office. Like I couldn't do that without them. So like literally like as I was, getting the offer accepted and we're having the closing in a week and I'm like reached out to the person on my team that's essentially allowing me to do that. And I said, you know what, if it wasn't for you, I don't know that I can do this because not having the right team here, I wouldn't be able to take that absence and to be away from here, knowing that everything here is still kicking ass without me.
totally.
So thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for allowing me to have that opportunity. And even just like all the players on the team, really trying to acknowledge more frequently their contributions and the results of their work and sharing with them. Like sometimes I'm privy to so much because I have a personal relationship with a lot of our clients and they tell
Mhm.
me all this stuff. And then I tell the team what's just happened to them and they're excited about that. And they share in that enthusiasm also. But certainly remembering all the people that helped you get to the space that you're at in life,
Totally.
is something that I think I needed to improve upon, and I'm glad that I'm able to again recognize that and just say thank you more frequently and acknowledge their efforts and just be grateful that they were all able to. I mean, when the first day back when I came from the hospital when I was here, a month or two after, and that was the first thing I did is sit down with everyone and just thank them for allowing me to recover, and to be home
Yeah.
and just focused on recovery and not, trying to run an ad agency at the same time,
Totally.
So definitely, I think a lot of owners could certainly learn from that too. Is just, there's a team out there, and I'm blessed to feel that this team really has my back, and so I try to make sure I do the same for them.
Mhm. Well, and I feel really blessed to have had a mentor in my life that was a business leader. That him actually, Joe Cardillo, and also
Hmm.
Angie McDougall, both phenomenal individuals. We used to sell Cutco knives together, which most people know of because their son's kid or daughter's kid came over and tried to sell it to them. and that was our experience as well. But both of these leaders, they were phenomenal human beings. And every time we would get together for a conference or an event, I would get some note. It could be something simple that would be scribbled on like a little notepad that was left out by the hotel, or it could be a book. But every time there was a handwritten note inside of it showing appreciation and showing gratitude to me as their sales rep. And it was always phenomenal. And I've continued on that tradition when I ran my office with them, and then also in running the magazine, and just always showing gratitude. But it's amazing what a simple little thing could do and the impact that it had. I stayed at that organization for 8 years, not because I love the knives, but because I love the people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's phenomenal what that little tiny thing can do, and varying it from speaking word to speaking about someone and bragging about them online, posting and tagging about how great your staff is, or writing them a handwritten note. It goes a long way. So
Yep.
I think this is the perfect segue now for one of our favorite themes of the show, the random question generator. And it was hilarious that this came up for you. Of all people, being the brand guy when it comes to HVAC, plumbing, and all things amazing brand designs. What brand are you most loyal to?
So wait, I have to get clarification on this question. Most loyal to meaning of brands that I've designed, or just brands in
You can
general?
take it any way you want. It was a random question. We pressed the button, and this was the question we got.
And I remember sharing with Evan, I started laughing. He's like, "What's the question?" And I read it. He's just like, "Oh, that's good."
Right? So yeah, it could be you as a customer. It could be you as the business owner and
consumer.
Yeah.
I mean, let's put it this way: if you put a one customer, you might get yourself into trouble.
Yeah. I would say it's a brand of bicycle called Colnago.
Nice.
It's the equivalent of the Ferrari of the car world. So Colnagos are handcrafted bicycles made in Italy that cost close to what a nice used Ferrari might cost. And so I've been riding Colnagos exclusively for probably the past 15 years. And the craftsmanship that goes into building one of those bikes, I really appreciate. And the history and the legacy of that brand. It's funny because as a kid, I loved the brand and the bicycles. And partly it was driven because I loved the logo so much. And I didn't know it at the time, like what was really attracting to me to this particular bike. But over the years, certainly a deep appreciation for just the aesthetics. And again, it's run by a 78-year-old entrepreneur who started the company and still continues to run it to this day. This Italian guy, little short Italian guy, and it's just an inspiring story for me. So it's hard for me to imagine ever riding anything but a Colnago at this point. And it's like I said, it's the best bicycle that I think is really made. So I've been fortunate to have several, and I ride one actually that I customized and put in the brand colors of KickCharge. So it's pretty cool. So I've got both things working. So I would say that's probably one of my most loyal brands that I would probably have a hard time leaving.
Well, and it's super important to you, right? Because you're an avid biker, and they've obviously built a lot of trust, and they've built a great brand promise for you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that, the ascension ladder, you're getting to an advocate. That's the last part of your customer value ladder, and getting into that. And when you have all of those pieces in place, now you get stories like this of having that brand loyalty. But you got to start with the beginning and having that brand in place. I do want to.
I love what you just said about that, by the way. Just real quick, when you said the idea of the story or the journey for that customer and getting to the advocate status, is building that brand to that point where they're the ones doing the talking for you. They're the ones on the Facebook groups talking to their neighbors about the great experience they had. And when somebody posts on their community Facebook page, hey, I need an air conditioning company, they're the ones
Yep.
yelling the loudest. And getting them to that journey is really all part of what the branding should be doing.
100%, 100%. And I do want to circle to one last question about the branding, but you did mention your colors. And I know when we put this guy up there, your website, kickcharge.com, you're like, can we put that in yellow and black? I'm like, well, that would take away from our branding of the pink, black, and white. So if you do want to get in touch with Dan, kickcharge.com is his website. I just realized the ticker across the bottom was not going this entire show, but hey, that's okay. I'll get it going for the last little bit of the wrap up. If you want to send him an email directly, you can reach out to him, dan@kickcharge.com. We'll put both of these in our show notes so you have that access as well to that. So as we start to wrap things up, one of the questions that I wanted to, actually Evan wanted to ask, but I'm going to steal it from him. You've mentioned a couple times about, brands and rebranding their business. And we've talked a little bit about, new brands, but an existing business with an established name, when does it make sense to look at a rebrand, and what is the process like going through that?
So the things we typically want to look at is the existing name as the first thing to examine. Does the existing name really work? Can it deliver a brand promise the way a better name might deliver a brand promise? So I always use the example of Smith's Heating and Air versus Air Experts. Which company by itself, judging by nothing else but their name, sounds like a better company? Right. So last name brands are typically challenging. A lot of times there's a lot of equity in a last name brand. Maybe they've been in the community for a really long time. So you have to weigh that. Initial based brands are typically the hardest to gain traction, like TJS Heating and Air. Well, what does that mean? Like why, or how would I remember that name versus something like, Red Fox Heating and Air? Well, I know what the visual for Red Fox Heating and Air is going to be. It's probably going to be a red fox. It's going to be very easy for people to remember that name. So you try to think about things that will be easy to remember, easy to spell, names that speak to a brand promise inherent in their name, typically are names that will work very well. And then you look at, like we said, how much equity do they have with their current name? Have they been in the community 50 years with this name? Well, then you have to really weigh that, because there's value in that brand name within that community for a long time. So you don't just want to discard that if there's equity. So you want to look at those. Typically, obviously, the lower the revenue numbers, like if you're at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, it's a lot more easy to be nimble at that particular price point or revenue level, I should say, than it is for somebody that's at 10, 15, $20 million. Obviously the cost of rebranding goes up incrementally as well. There's more trucks to re-letter, there's more uniforms to do over, things like that. So if you're in the kind of $0 to $2 million range, that's a good conversation to have if there's something better that we can think of that would get you to where you want to go faster. Now, you can get to where you want to go with any name as long as you throw enough money at it, right? I mean, you could have the worst name in the world and you keep throwing money at it. Eventually you'll get there. But I want to try to see that trajectory go from like this, slow, steady grind to start really going up fast. And I also want to see you spending the least amount of money possible on advertising. So I'd rather have a more sticky brand that gets in people's head, that's memorable, that speaks to brand promise, and you'll need to spend significantly less money overall to get people to remember it. And that's the beauty of it. Like, people look and say, oh, you got to spend 10% to grow. And I'm like, that's bullshit. You don't need to spend 10% to grow if you have a really great brand. You should be able to spend a lot less than that. And honestly, the comfort level that I want to see most of my clients living in is around around 4 to 5%. I've got guys growing like from 2.5 million to 5 million in 24 months, spending 4% in a competitive market. That's double the revenue in 24 months without changing anything significant about their marketing strategy. So, I guess if you want to grow even faster, yeah, you can go to 10%. But at a certain point, when you're living in the 10% world, to me, you're just basically generating revenue to pay for advertising. And I don't know that there's as much profit in there as I'd like you to be in. So, if you've got a strong name that can deliver that brand promise and can be sticky in their heads, you're going to get there faster than somebody with a poor name that's going to need to work so much harder to get people to know even what they do. Like it's the generic, like some guys like, TJS services, and then they'll put underneath, or home services, which is another problematic name for a service business, because home service could mean so many things. It could mean you're going to fix my roof, you're going to change my windows, you're going to cut my grass. Like, how is home services suddenly ubiquitous to HVAC? Like, it's not. So then you still need to put heating, air conditioning, plumbing, electrical on the side of your truck. So what have we really accomplished by calling yourself something home services? So, naming is so important. We're blessed to have done a ton of naming over the last couple of years. I think like this year we'll probably do about 40 different names for HVAC companies. And I love when we have that opportunity, because now you're just conjuring up something from scratch and you're building this whole brand story around this unique name. And it's just a lot of fun. It's really, really a fun process to go through, because there's no baggage. There's no like, oh, well, we need to keep orange because our trucks have been orange for so many years. And you're like, okay. So there's just zero clean slate. So it's really a fun process when we have those opportunities.
No, I love that. That's amazing. And yes, starting from scratch can be daunting. And yet the freedom that you get going through that process, especially as a creative, right? To be able to have that freedom to just do whatever and take it whichever direction you want. One of the things I did want to touch on really quick as well before we wrap up is, if you're a new business, what are the top 3 things that I should be focusing on when I'm creating my logo and creating my design? Because one thing, I know we touched on a lot of those topics. One of the things you didn't touch on was going through the process of color selection. And I've heard you talk about this before, and I'd be remiss if I didn't at least ask the question and get you to walk through that process of how you go about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're brand new, and let's say you come to us and you say, I want to brand my company, and maybe you already have a name. Let's assume you already have a name. Our process is going to consist of looking at what your competitive landscape looks like, what the color schemes that are being used in your market are, and then trying to devise a plan for you where we can develop a set of colors that will be unique in your market and that will be ownable. So to the earlier point when we spoke about red, white, and blue as brand colors, outside of the fact that HVAC is very prevalent to be using red, white, and blue, you also are competing against red, white, and blue and the Americana that's associated with that as well. So it's a very difficult color scheme to own, and to say every time you see red, white, and blue, you're thinking of Joe's Heating and Air. Like, it's difficult to really break through and say you own red, white, and blue. Most guys really can't own it. They'll live in that world, but it's very difficult to own. But if you were purple and apple green, like Trey Anderson at Dream Team, we did his branding, and he owns apple green and purple in his market. There isn't a single company in his market that is using those colors. And every time you see his trucks, it's one of his trucks. So we really look carefully at, not only just the logos of those competitors, but we want to look at their vehicles and see what they're using. Because I really want, as that truck is approaching a consumer, I want that to register to them as being something that they haven't seen before and that they're only associating with one specific company. So it's really important to really give a lot of thought to color, and even just thinking bigger about color, not just how it lives on the truck, but how it needs to live on uniforms for the guys, and how is it going to look on the website, and those other considerations as well. So we're really trying to focus on the idea of disrupting that market with a unique color palette. And even if you had to do something that was red, using reds and blues, try thinking about, dark red and process blue or bright blue, or something like that. So try to go off the traditional colors of the American flag by going a few shades lighter or darker in either direction, and at least trying to create something that feels a little bit more ownable for that particular brand. We've done plenty of red, white, and blue brands. Even Gettle really is red and blue, but it's not traditional like red. It's like a blue gray. And again, that was intentional, because I didn't want him to be confused, and I wanted him to be able to own those brand colors when we created them for him.
Totally. Yeah, he's much more of like a denim blue than a
yeah
exactly. It's almost kind of like the black, yellow, and white, and the black, pink, and white that we both represent, right? They're different, they're out there, they pop, right? So I
Yeah.
love that because color is, I mean, and there's a whole psychology on the different types of colors as well and what they represent and what they mean.
Mhm.
It's why do you think McDonald's is yellow and red? Well, it invokes hunger when you look at those
Right.
two
Right.
colors together. So there's a big color psychology that goes also in behind it and what that means to the end consumer. So
So is that
um,
why I'm so
Yeah.
hungry looking at Dan's chair and his red shirt? Is that
probably,
all right?
probably. So
You know,
I mean, it
one
just
other
makes
thing
me
too,
thirsty for
I know
more
you guys
whiskey.
want to wrap up, but you mentioned earlier too, like if I'm a new startup and I'm trying to figure out this piece of the puzzle and the investment in it, the thing that we see so often is everyone is trying to shoestring their startup budgets for a new heating and air conditioning company, and I respect that and I understand that. The problem typically lies in their third year or so when they're trying to springboard and they're trying to really rapidly grow, and then they
Mhm.
realize that everything that they have invested in from a brand perspective really ultimately has to be done over. And so they're into 10 wrap trucks or something like that that now all have to be done over. So if you can afford to do it the right way from day one, first off, you'll get to where you want to go faster. But secondly, I think you'll save so much more money in the long run because you won't have to redo this again. Like this should be a one-time thing. We probably do 150 or so new brands a year, but all those companies went somewhere else to start and then realized that it didn't represent them, and who they were today and where they wanted to go in the future, and had to really redo all that. So it's very expensive to do it a second time. So like if you can afford to do it right the first time, I think that that's a smarter investment long term, because when it's done right, like we shouldn't need to revisit this. Like I don't
Mhm.
think Ken is going to revisit a rebrand on Gettle anytime soon. Like I'm pretty confident
Well,
about that, and I don't know how I would make it any better actually. So I hope he doesn't ask me to. But if it's done right, you really shouldn't have to do any more,
yeah.
to it. And everything that you're investing in, the equipment, stickers, the uniforms for the guys, the website, all that stuff can just integrate the brand the way it
Uh,
should be
and
from
you're
day one.
and
So
if you put your swag out there too, like if you start doing that part of things right now, you don't have to actually redo all of your swag. It's already done from the
right,
get-go and it's there and it's set up right the right way from the beginning. So it's when you have that extra dollars, put it towards doing it the right way to start. So and hey, there are some guys that are going to shoestring it, but it doesn't build the long-term success and although they might look at it saying, okay, well, if I'm doing a couple million, well, I can afford to redo it then, but you might not ever get around to redoing it because
yeah,
now it's just a hassle. And now you look at the price and the expense of it at that time being 4, 5, 6 times greater than it actually was when you first started.
Mhm.
So, and I mean,
right,
those are just numbers. I don't actually know what the expense would be later on. Probably is dependent on the business and how many vehicles that they have going on. So, absolutely valid point there. So, last question, and this is one of my favorites, what is one question you wished people would ask you more but don't? And to buy you some time, I will repeat that question. So, what is one question you wished people would ask you more but don't?
um, that's hard. I would say sometimes during the process of branding, you have a client that gives you full creative license and says, do whatever you think because you're the expert. And I probably wish that we had more clients that would simply let us do our jobs to the best of our ability. So you have a fine balance of trying to make sure, obviously, you're listening to their feedback and you're being respectful of their feedback. But sometimes clients ask us to do things that are fundamentally wrong and that will
Mm,
ultimately hurt them. So I wish more people would say, either do whatever you think or you're the expert, we're just going to let you do what you do. And the irony of, like, when I look at, and again, we've done so many brands over the years, but the best performing brands for our clients have been ones in which the client has really trusted the process and just said, hey, you know what, like, I put heating and air conditioning systems in, that's my world and this is your world, and I'm going to just let you do what you guys do. And so, yeah, I would say that that's one question I wish people say is like, Dan, what do you think we should do? And I still try to tell them, but like I said, you always want to be respectful, and I never want to really shoot down feedback. I want to listen to them as best I can. But if they are asking me to do something that is not in their best interest, I really don't like to give a customer what they're asking for if it's not what they actually need. So there's a little bit of a fine balance there, of course. And like I said, when people just give us the latitude and they're like, you know what, whatever you guys think, we're gonna do, and like those brands are the ones that like just kill it. Like they just do so well. So I don't know. Hopefully that's a good answer.
No, I like it.
Love it. Well, I'll finish with this, and it's one of my favorite quotes, but people will forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that starts for a lot of businesses with the logo. And so I really encourage everyone to take action on some of the things that Dan shared today. I know you left a lasting impression on me with your story about living life to the fullest, living life for the now, and really showing gratitude and appreciation. And one of our long-term listeners opened the show, Jason Julian, by saying Dan is the man. And we absolutely love Jason and all of his enthusiasm and all of his love. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. So thank you so much, Dan, for being on the show. We gratefully appreciate your time. And yeah, it was a fantastic episode. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys about branding. And again, grateful for the opportunity as well. So thanks.
No worries. Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Peace out.
Hey, thanks for watching another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. That URL one more time, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one little golden nugget of information from this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, what we ask is you introduce this show to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all we ask. Introduce it to one person in your contacts list so they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.